Every report card measures the same narrow things: how fast your child reads, how neatly they spell, how quickly they finish the page. And if your child is dyslexic, those columns can make for painful reading. But here is what no report card has a column for: the way your child can look at a broken thing and see immediately how it fits back together. The way they tell a story that holds the whole room. The way they notice the one detail everybody else walked straight past. Those are not consolation prizes. They are real abilities, and today we're going to name 7 of them. In the next few minutes, we'll go through 7 strengths that show up again and again in dyslexic children. And I'll be honest with you about what the research does and doesn't say. Because here's my promise. I'm not going to tell you dyslexia is a gift and reading doesn't matter. That would be a lie, and you'd know it. Reading is hard, the difficulty is real, and it deserves proper support. What I'm going to do is give you the other half of the picture, the half your child rarely hears about themselves. One note before we start. This isn't medical advice or a diagnosis. If reading is a persistent struggle, the people to speak to are your child's teacher, a specialist, or an educational psychologist. Let's start with the 2 that show up earliest. The first is big picture thinking. While other children work through a problem step by step, many dyslexic children jump straight to the shape of the whole thing. Ask them how the story ends, and they often know before they've finished reading it. Ask them why the argument in the room doesn't add up, and they'll tell you, even if they can't explain how they got there. The second is spatial reasoning. This is the child who can look at a flat picture of something and see it turning in 3 dimensions. Who builds the model without the instructions. Who reorganizes their bedroom in their head before moving a single thing. It's the skill that sits underneath engineering, architecture, surgery, design. And it's very often strong in dyslexic thinkers. You've probably already seen both of these at home without naming them. The jigsaw finished from the picture rather than the edges. The flat pack shelf assembled while the instruction sheet stayed in the box. The question at dinner that cut straight to the thing the adults were carefully talking around. The third strength is pattern recognition. Dyslexic minds are often unusually good at spotting the thing that repeats. And, just as importantly, the thing that breaks the pattern. The odd one out in a row of shapes. The moment a routine shifts, the detail in a photograph that everyone else scrolled past. The fourth is storytelling. This one surprises parents most because it sits so close to the difficulty. A child who struggles to decode words on a page can be extraordinary with words in the air. They hold the thread. They know where the suspense goes. They remember a story they heard once, months ago, and give it back to you with the good bits sharpened. If your child talks brilliantly but writes painfully, that gap is not a contradiction. It's one of the most recognizable patterns there is. The fifth strength is the one teachers notice, even when they don't have a name for it. Give a dyslexic child a problem, and they will often solve it, but not by the route in the textbook. They come at it sideways. They find the shortcut, or the workaround, or the completely different question that makes the original problem disappear. There's a reason for this, and it's not magic. A child who has spent years finding their own way through reading has been practicing exactly one skill every single day. What do I do when the standard method doesn't work for me? That is problem solving under pressure, rehearsed daily for years. It doesn't stay in the reading corner, it goes with them. Watch for it in the small moments, the one who works out how to carry everything in one trip, the one who finds the way around the locked gate while everyone else is still trying the handle. Teachers sometimes read this as not following instructions. Very often it's the opposite. It's a child who understood the goal so clearly that the instructions became optional. The sixth strength doesn't come from the brain wiring. It comes from the experience. Many dyslexic children become remarkably good at reading people. When you've spent years in classrooms where a task might expose you, you learn to scan the room. You watch faces. You notice mood before it's announced. Parents often describe a child who is unusually tuned in to how everyone around them is feeling, and that awareness is a real social strength. And the seventh is perseverance. This is the one I'd underline twice. Your child does something every school day that most adults would find exhausting, a task that is genuinely harder for them than for the person sitting next to them, repeated in public, without applause. If they are still turning up and still trying, you are not looking at a lazy child. You are looking at a persistent one. Now let me keep my promise and be straight with you about the evidence. The evidence here is more mixed than most videos on this subject admit. The strongest support is for the very first one on our list, the tendency to process things globally, taking in the whole before the parts. That shows up repeatedly in studies, including research on how dyslexic readers use peripheral vision. But it arrives as a trade-off rather than a free gift. The same wiring that favors the whole picture is what makes the detailed, piece-by-piece work harder. The British Dyslexia Association also lists creative skills, problem-solving and oral skills among the strengths commonly seen. Others on our list, reading people, perseverance, are reported constantly by families and teachers, but the science on them is thinner. And no researcher claims that every dyslexic child has all seven, or that dyslexia hands out abilities as compensation. So please don't hear this as dyslexia is a superpower. That framing sounds kind, but it can quietly tell a struggling child that they should be grateful for something that hurts. The honest version is better, and it's this. Your child has a real difficulty that deserves real support, and a set of real strengths that deserve to be named out loud. Both things are true at once, and that honesty matters for a practical reason too. A child who is told they have a superpower, on a day when the page still won't behave, learns that the adults are being kind rather than truthful, and then stops believing the encouragement altogether. Name the hard thing as hard. Name the strength as real. Children can hold both, as long as we don't ask them to pretend. So what's the one thing to do tonight? Just one. Pick the strength on this list that sounded most like your child. Then tell them, specifically, not "you're so clever," which slides off. Something they can actually hold. You saw how that fitted together before any of us did. You told that story better than the book did. Children build their self-image out of the sentences the adults around them repeat. Right now, most of the sentences your child hears about their own mind come from a system measuring the one thing they find hardest. You are allowed to be the voice that names the rest. Your child is not a reading score with a person attached. They are a whole mind. And now you have 7 words for the parts of it that no one was measuring. If this gave you something to say to your child tonight, subscribe. One topic every week for parents and teachers of neurodivergent kids. No fear, no judgment, just support. See you next week.